Nate, have you heard that the average attention span for a person today when looking at a headline or a short update is only 8 seconds?
Well, then we better get started because you lost me 15 seconds ago.
The fundamentals of business. Mental is a part of the word.
I never ask my clients to judge me on my winners. I ask them to judge me on my losers because I have so few.
There's money in the banana stand.
I'm a hard-working man.
You can't learn how to close. You better start thinking about another career.
Put that coffee down.
Welcome back to Take It Offline, everybody. I'm Nate, and that is Mike.
Hey, Nate, do you have all the answers yet?
I most certainly do not.
Oh, that's perfect, because this podcast is created for all of us that are still curious about living, working, and leading well.
And between our decades of leadership experience, Mike and I are going to ask the questions, challenge what's normal, and debate the answers.
We do like our debate, Nate.
That's your favorite part, I think.
I think it is, because my wife won't do it. Today, we are discussing why evolving your leadership communication is critical to your success.
That's exactly right. We're talking about the evolution of the executive voice, and we're going to be focusing on how communication requirements shift as you move from managing projects to managing people. There's the tactical versus strategic communication, context switching, and audience segmentation, and then leading through crisis and change. But before we get to all that, Mike, I wanted to bring back just the tail end of our conversation from last week about the feedback loop. One of the things that you mentioned in our pre-show meeting that we never really got to was the importance of providing feedback and offering feedback to colleagues after presentations. And you gave an example of someone might come up to you after a meeting and they'll say, "Oh, hey, that was a great presentation," and you'll say, "Well, why?" And they'll say, "Oh, it was just great, and it was perfect."
Yeah, you get the platitudes.
Yeah, and then nothing ever comes from it.
Not very helpful.
No, and you had a really good creative way to kind of flip it.
So I didn't do this last week because of kind of where we were and where I knew we were going. Because next week we're going to get very detailed about how to get better. But I think it is a perfect connection here. And more importantly, it's something that you and I do with each other. So I thought it would be great to kind of share with the audience.
So Mike and I go back and listen to our episodes, not out of vanity, but more so to air check ourselves and
critique.
And you listen to how we're doing. And personally, I spend more time critiquing myself than I do critiquing you, frankly.
Same. I can't tell you the number of things I'm like, gosh, I said that way too much.
This exercise is going to be a little bit different because, Mike, you suggested that we grade the other and give the other a constructive criticism.
Yeah, so let me explain how this works. I learned this a long time ago. Don't know who to give it credit to, but it's been super helpful because
just take the credit.
What you described is exactly what you get. Hey, how did I do? You did great.
It was great, yeah.
That doesn't help you. That's not constructive. And then you could even push it a little bit, and it starts to get a little bit awkward because you can just tell that they're not really looking for it.
Yeah.
So here's what I've learned to do. Nate, on a scale of 1 to 10, how did I do last week in last week's podcast?
Mike, I would give you a solid 8.
An 8. What's the one thing that I could do that could make it a 9?
I would say there were moments when you had these thoughts, these complete thoughts that were well thought out, well researched thoughts, but they were too large. And there were moments when I wanted to jump in with either follow-ups or pushback, and I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought and your flow of things, but there wasn't an opportunity to expand on some really good thoughts and ideas that you had in there.
So chunk it down a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, create better chunks. It's
Exactly.
funny. That's actually in my research for how to do better presentations.
Oh, is it really?
It is, which proves how difficult this can be. Even
Yes.
when you know it, the acting upon it is hard.
Yes.
So that's great feedback. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And here's what I'll tell you. I don't love hearing that.
Yeah?
Right. But that's what makes it good.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where it's that uncomfortable. We talked about this several weeks ago, that uncomfortableness that helps to create growth. So you've created this uncomfortableness, which I will now be more self-aware of.
Challenge creates growth, Mike.
And I will create growth.
Yes.
Yes. Thanks for challenging me.
Absolutely. Hey, what about me?
Look, I'd give you an 8 as well. Maybe an 8.5.
Oh.
Yeah. You are very good at it. I found one specific thing. I'm just going to jump into I'm not going to make you ask the question because we know where we're going.
What was the question?
What's the one thing that can make me a 9.5?
Oh, yeah.
But you can ask
I think
it
that's
if you like.
implied.
Yeah, it is
for
now.
the examples now, yeah.
Right at minute 57, and we actually do this, folks. We go through and do timestamp.
Yes, we do.
At minute 57, you had a great line, Nate. I mean, it was fantastic. And I had to go back because I couldn't remember what I loved because you added a little bit too much to it. So there was a mic drop moment. So my coaching is when you've got something that is memorable, just end with it. Just drop that mic and let it go. And I think what you specifically said was, and I think I'm going to have to paraphrase here because I may have lost it now. It was something to the effect of that companies don't fall apart because of one miscommunication. It's a slow bleed.
Yeah.
And then you followed up after that. And I felt like all of that probably wasn't needed because that was such a memorable line.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I will keep that in mind. And this is going to be interesting, folks, because whereas Mike and I will give each other feedback, very rarely do we give each other feedback live and in person as we're beginning a podcast episode. So now we're going to be a little bit self-conscious, I bet, the next several minutes.
Yeah, hold on. Let's see. The heart rate's over 100 now.
Well, you know what, though? One of the things, both Mike and I do genuinely enjoy good constructive feedback, but it also does kind of challenge us and it pushes on us a little bit. And I think one of the reasons why we can give one another good feedback is because there is a genuine care and affection for the other. We have a good personal relationship outside of this podcast. We're friends, and so we know that whenever either of us gives feedback, whether it's live on the mics or off the mics, we know that it's coming from a place of care and love. And so that makes it easier to hear and accept it.
You know, Nate, I don't think we were going to talk about this, but you're making a really critical point, which is that personal relationship that you create with people that you work with and or lead is so important because it then allows them to know where are you coming from?
Yeah.
What is the intention of the feedback that I'm getting from you? And that is very true. I know your intention when you say something to me is that you have my best interest in heart, that there is no selfishness to it. And I think that makes a huge difference. And when it's not there, that's a little bit harder. And I've got a few things where I'm going to point that out later today.
Look, well, good. And this actually, it made me think of, two things. One, trust is a key component of communication. And back in the first episode of this little mini series within our podcast, we talked about how leaders can outsource communication, but they can't outsource trust. And that's where eventually the voice of the leader has to be the primary vehicle of communication. And that's why it's so important. But the other thing, before we get into the meat of today's topic, talking about feedback loop, and I wish I'd brought it up last week, but I didn't. I've heard feedback loop used in a negative context more than I've heard it used in a positive context. And as when you brought it up last week and we were talking through it both in our pre-show and on the episode, I was thinking to myself, I was second guessing myself, well, hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the feedback loop is a positive thing. But then I was listening to another podcast and I heard someone, they were referring to a leader, and they said, oh, well, he's just stuck in the feedback loop. Sort of like a doom spiral where he's surrounded himself by, he or she can surround themselves by a bunch of yes people that they don't have anybody that says, oh, you were only an 8. Not only, but you know what I mean. You were an 8 on that presentation or an 8 in that meeting. Here's what you could have done to be better. It's just people that are like, oh, 10, you are perfect. You're wonderful. And yes, we're going to do this. Oh, that's a great idea. And they're surrounded, a leader surrounds him or herself by sycophants who are just going to get them stuck in a feedback loop rather than in a loop where it's, oh, here's some constructive feedback from a leader that I know and trust, and here's how I'm going to take action on that feedback and pour it into my work so that it will improve, and then I'm going to come back for additional feedback, whether from him or from the team. That's the positive aspect of the feedback loop that I think we were getting to. But I think that there are a lot of leaders that find themselves trapped into that negative spiral.
Well, when you said it, I'm like, gosh, really? Like, can that be negative? I just noticed it now. I didn't notice it when we talked about it before, but there's a key word that you change at the beginning of that. It's we talked about having a feedback loop, right? And you just described it. I get feedback. It's critical. And I think one of the litmus tests for everyone should be, does it sting a little, right? Because reality is feedback ought to just sting just a little bit because truthfully, none of us like to be told what we're doing wrong.
Yep.
And then I do something to get a little bit better at it, whatever that may be. And next week, we'll talk a lot more about what you can do. But what you just said is the feedback loop.
Okay.
So do you have, you're stuck in the feedback loop versus I have a feedback loop.
That's a good.
So I think there's a little distinction there. It all comes down to genuine.
Yeah.
Why are you asking? Are you asking for this feedback because you want the affirmation and you want to feel good about yourself? Or are you asking for it because you know, hey, I can get better? Because I don't think there's a single person out there that will tell you that they can't get better at their communication. And so if your intention, your genuine intention is to get better, then you do something like what you and I just did. And you don't look for and you don't allow that sycophant piece to come in.
Yeah.
If someone tells me, oh, Mike, you're a 10, there's nothing you could do better, it's the last time I ever asked that person for feedback.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's not who I need in my circle. I need my feedback loop to be the people that will give me 5, 6s, and 7s and then tell me the one thing that I can do to take it up one notch.
And the people that are going to give you the 5, 6, and 7s and root for you to get to the 8, 9s, and 10s, not give you the 5, 6, and 7 because they want to watch you fail and crash and burn. And I think that there are some people that give feedback from that negative perspective as well. And we just need to be aware of that and cautious of it, I would think.
Well, you mentioned in the quote that you gave me last week, right? Those individuals that are coming from a place of below.
Yeah.
They don't want what's best for you.
Right.
And are envious or bitter for some reason. And therefore, you're right. But again, you have to recognize that. You need to have some discernment. And you'll know that. If I ask 4 or 5 people and most of them give me 7s and 8s and one gives me a 3.
Right.
Okay, there's a disconnect there, right? And where's that coming from?
Yes, exactly.
Well, here's the other thing you notice. If you do this exercise, people come back to you on their own and say, hey, Mike, that was an 8 this time. It was a 7 last time, but it was an 8. You worked on chunking out your statements.
Okay.
And they tell you
They
that.
notice it, yeah.
And that's how you know someone's rooting for you.
Fantastic point. Couldn't agree more.
Did you have an example of this?
I did, actually.
I think it's a fun one. I'd love for you to share.
Okay, sure. So an example that I have of someone being stuck in the feedback loop was the owner, the one-time owner of the Washington Redskins.
Hold on. Do you have a boo?
Oh, I do. Let me see. One moment.
We really need a boo right here. Boo. I'm going to join the sound effect. As a Washington Commanders fan, lifelong.
Yes.
I celebrated the day he sold the team.
Yes. And Dan Snyder, the team really struggled. They were a fledgling franchise, a bit of a laughing stock for a long time under his tenure.
He's rated as the 3rd worst owner in all of sports, not just football.
Is he
all
really?
of sports, 3rd worst.
That's a bad day.
The only person worse than him was like a pedophile.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, you know something's wrong.
That's right.
When a convict is just slightly worse than you. Okay, go ahead.
So Dan Snyder, he surrounded himself by yes people. And so you had fans like Mike or even just casual observers of the team like myself who were like, why would they make this personnel move? Why would they promote this person to GM and demote this person? Why would they fire this coach? Why would they take this person in the draft? And everything would always trace back to him. He was one of those very hands-on owners. And anybody could look at it and say, what's he doing? But he had surrounded himself by enough people that were like, oh, great idea.
So many well-respected, talented people that just got fired out of the organization.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then went on to have great success elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco.
Yep.
You know.
He was the first one that came to mind.
McVay. Who,
yes.
Like youngest coach and won a Super Bowl with yes. I mean, there's so many examples. I could do a podcast on the how Snyder ruined 25 years of my adult life as a Washington Commanders fan.
But let's bring it back to the feedback loop. And so that was the example when I was looking at the feedback loop from a negative lens, was a leader like that who is in such power, has so much control that they hire in people that will give them 10s on every presentation and every single idea.
Well, Nate, you heard about one of his early ideas about bathrooms?
No, tell me.
So he had this early idea of how to generate revenue at the stadium.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Who had this early idea?
Dan Snyder. And he walked into his room of, his executive group.
Yes.
And he said, guys, I got this great idea on how we're going to make revenue at the stadium. We're going to put coin slots in the bathroom. So you got to have a quarter to pee.
Oh, I thought you meant like playing slots while you're standing at the.
Now that would actually be that might be a good idea. But as we talked about last week, here's an example of a leader who walked in the room, didn't say, hey, let's talk about revenue generation ideas, and sit back and be a leader who eats last.
Right. He just came in.
Walked in with the idea, and guess what they all said?
Oh, what a great idea.
Oh, that's a great. Oh, we're going to make so much money. That's fantastic. That's brilliant. That's genius. Da, 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 da. Except for one guy who's like, do you have any idea what people are going to do? Have you ever been to like a concert? Have you ever been around drunk people?
Or a football game with a bunch of angry drunk
He's like,
people?
they will pee in every trash can and sink we have.
Exactly.
Right? In every corner of the building.
And not even out of malice, just you can't find a quarter or whatever. Yeah.
One of the executives in the room basically told this guy, you're an idiot. And this is why.
Really?
Yeah. And
the guy who spoke up against him.
And said, this is why you suck. Right?
Wow.
Right. So then, apparently, and this is actually a positive for Snyder.
Okay.
He came back to this guy a couple weeks later, and he made the comment of, I went and asked a lot of our business personnel, and told them what you said, and they all agreed with you, and they said the same thing, which is, yes, it will absolutely destroy the stadium because people will just go wherever they can go. No one's going to pay to pee.
There you go.
And so, thank goodness it never happened.
Yeah.
But it's a great example of his horrible leadership.
Yes.
And his inability to understand that he should walk into the room and have an open discussion rather than put a stake in the ground with his idea.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm glad you brought him up because I think that is one of the best examples of a bad leader that destroys a very healthy organization.
Yes, because they were, for the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the Washington Redskins, now the Commanders, they were a force to be reckoned with every year.
They went to like 5 Super Bowls in like 10 years or 11 years. They won 3 of them.
They beat my Buffalo Bills in a Super Bowl in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone beat your Buffalo Bills in the 90s. That's like 4 times in a row, man.
That was painful, Mike.
I know. It was so painful. I started to root for them just to get rid of the pain.
All NFC East teams. Anyway, so yes, that's an example of the negative feedback loop.
Yeah, perfect example of surrounding yourself with sycophants and having the loop versus having a productive loop.
Yes,
which is what we're advocating. Have a productive feedback loop, one that has genuine interest in understanding what people heard, what they need, and what they're taking away from your communication.
And the introspection to make changes in yourself as they need to be made.
Yes.
Which, speaking of changes, the main topic of today is the evolution of the executive voice and how the style and the manner in which a person communicates needs to evolve over time as positions and responsibilities morph and evolve as well.
Yeah, and this is not an easy one, Nate. And you laid out the segments. We're going to go through 3 segments. Give it to everybody again just to make sure that they follow with where we're going here.
Yeah, so the first piece of this is tactical versus strategic communication. And then we're going to look at context switching and audience segmentation, how senior leadership need to communicate the same strategic goal differently to different audiences. And then lastly, we're going to wrap up with leading through crisis and change. And Mike, you mentioned that one would kind of be a throwaway. We may not spend as much time on that. When we get there, I have a little bit of a pushback on that. I think that happens more frequently than we may realize, a leader needing to manage through that. So we'll get to that.
Interesting. Okay. Look forward to hearing that.
So first up, tactical versus strategic communication. Mike, take me through the thought process, because leadership says what and why, but the people that actually have to do the job are wondering how the hell it's actually going to happen come Monday morning.
Well, I think there's 5 levels that I break it down into.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could do more, maybe you could do less. Give me your take on this.
Okay.
Level 1 in leadership. I've got a small on-site team, right? We're in a building. Maybe we run a crew, whatever that might look like. It's small, it's on-site. And you're going to have direct daily communication. And I think that's where the tactical is. That's very frontline, right? Tactical becomes very frontline, and it's a lot about the how and the when.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
This is when we're doing this is how we're doing this. That happens a lot on that front line, which is small on-site teams. Then you get a little closer to maybe you move up a little bit. Now you got some dispersed teams,
Okay.
right? So maybe you've got multiple offices that you're managing.
Okay.
Right? Still under your leadership, but you're not in the same office all the time. Maybe you go weeks or months without seeing a particular portion of your team because they're dispersed. Maybe they're geographically dispersed.
Okay.
Different parts of the country, maybe different parts of the globe. And so, but again, probably still tactical, but you might be getting a little bit more into that strategic, which is the whys and the wheres of what you're doing.
Because you're relying on your leaders in those individual sites to carry out the tactics.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. And it may just be a peer leader, right? It might not be a formal leader, but yep, something to that effect. Then I think level 3 is you're leading other leaders. Right? So you were a leader of leaders. And at that point, it really is different, right? Because they're now the ones that are being a little bit more frontline, a little bit more tactical. And you really are moving into that why and that where. So you have to evolve. The fourth one is you get to you're managing through other leaders.
Okay.
Right? And so now you're talking, maybe multi-levels, right? Where you're an executive. There's 4 or 5 divisions. There's a leader of the division. They all have leaders within their team, and so you're talking about 2 down, 3 down type leadership that you're managing through.
Yeah.
And then the lastly is that executive role where you're in charge of, either an extremely large organization or the entire company.
Yes.
Right. And you may not have interaction with some people ever. Right. Very possible. Or your only interaction may be through a large presentation that you're doing, in a conference room or even potentially virtually that's being broadcast out. And so I think there's these different levels. And as you climb through these levels, you have to evolve your way through them because each one of them needs something just a little bit different from you.
Yeah.
There's a great saying / it's a book, but it's saying, what got you here won't get you there.
Right.
And I think it applies very clearly to this. What got you into that leadership on the small site is not what's going to take you to leadership of that executive C-suite office. It's a different type of communication that you're going to have.
Yes. Like you said, tactical is the what and the strategy is the how. And those need to be communicated very, very differently, especially on those different levels that you were describing. And that's a huge challenge for people, especially if someone is a strong individual contributor on one of those teams that you described. A lot of times they'll be pegged for the promotion that puts them in charge of a team of people. Just because they're a strong individual contributor doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be a strong leader with those strong communication skills that's required for the team to grow and thrive. They may be able to speak very well to a client or potential customer, but if they're not fully equipped and trained in that new leadership voice, that's how you get people promoted into positions where they flounder.
Well, Nate, you've said this throughout our series here of communication, that it is critical, and while you may be able to delegate portions of it, it's not something you can completely delegate.
Right.
And you've also said as you continue to climb, less and less you can delegate that ability to communicate. So
precisely.
You might be able to be a good leader in certain fashions, someone that demonstrates core values very well, someone that coaches very well. But what we've talked about, and we both believe, communication is critical to leadership and your growth as a leader. And you're right, just because somebody can demonstrate some leadership skills, we sometimes assume that, they'll figure that part of it out.
Yes.
So let me ask you, you've been around long enough. Do you see leadership communication being taught?
No, and I was actually going to ask you that. I was driving in, and I was listening to the last part of last week's episode, and I had that thought. I don't think anybody's teaching the leaders how to communicate. They're either expecting it to happen, maybe a few recognize their shortcomings and go out and search for that training, but it's not part of any sort of leadership training that I have been a part of.
So I heard something, I feel like we said this a little bit last week, and then it actually showed up when I was at church on Sunday.
Okay.
And it was, the pastor was describing the idea of instruction versus teaching.
Okay, yeah.
Is there a distinction for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I figured there would be, because I kind of know how your mind works, and And you are able to kind of separate those things and see the nuance between the two. In your mind, because you're probably better at this than I am, what's the difference then between instruction and teaching?
Instruction is the I do, you watch. I'm going to do something, show you how it's done, and you watch it. Teaching is we do it together, or you do and I watch and offer feedback so that you can get better. It's like I'm a musician and I've taught piano before. If I'm just instructing piano, I might play a piece and show a student how you're supposed to hold your hand over the keys, what the notes are supposed to sound like. They're not going to get better. They're going to know where they're supposed to go.
Because you've given them instruction.
Because I've given them the instruction. Then the teaching is, okay, now you play it, and let me show you how your hand is supposed to move, how the fingering is supposed to flow through this passage so that it sounds like the way that I did it. And you offer that that feedback along the way.
Now, to answer your question about my question that you were planning on asking as well, our question.
Yes.
Of do we teach leadership communication? Instructionally, I believe we do.
Okay, great point. Yep.
But I don't think we teach it.
Yes.
And I've seen this where you'll sit through a class and they'll talk through it, right? Ways to do it. But then that teaching, and you describe, we had a lady that worked for us. She was a former kindergarten teacher.
Okay.
Which fits perfect in my world because many of us act like kindergartners.
Sure.
And we need naps in the middle of the day and we get mad when our juice box doesn't show up. So it was a perfect fit for her as a kindergarten teacher to come over. And she in the middle of a meeting was very quiet. She kind of had an administrative role. And she made this comment. She goes, well, what you guys are describing is I do, we do, you do. And that exactly what you just described, but it was her I do, we do, you do. And is that transition of learning from instruction to teaching. And it was genius, right? And it was so simple. It was easy to remember. I heard this 5 years ago, and I still, off the top of my head, can remember it because it was an easy thing to remember.
Yes.
Which makes sense because she was working with kindergartners, and like I said, that's pretty much what we are.
Yes.
I think that's the gap.
Yeah.
Is that the instruction occurs, but we don't necessarily have room for the teaching.
Yes. Now, I will say this. I have been fortunate to work with a handful of leaders who did teach communication, and I loved it. They were not perfect leaders or perfect humans. None of us are. But those elements of communication and even challenging me, say, hey, Nate, next time, try phrasing it this way. Or, hey, Nate, maybe if you said it this way. And it was one of the things that kind of helped me round off some of my harder edges, my black and white Gen X thinking was, it was soften that thought a little bit, change it. You don't have to be so abrasive all the time. So
well, hang out with me and I'll put the edges back on.
That's why we make a good pair, Mike.
I'll bring it back for you. I'm about 2 year. I got 2 extra years of Gen X over you. So
that's true. That's true. Just 2?
Just 2.
Okay.
I think so. Am I 3?
I don't
know how old I am, Nate. If anyone knows, write in and tell me.
I think a good transition from tactical versus strategic communication going into context switching and audience segmentation and talking about how senior leaders must communicate the exact same strategic goal differently to different distinct audiences. Mike, when you're describing those 5 levels of communication, you're discussing communicating from a very different vantage point. We'll call it altitude. That a leader needs to be able to zoom out to the perspective that is befitting of their oversight. So frontline communication, Mike, like you were talking, that team that's in the weeds, that's in the day-to-day, that's going to be communication coming from a very low altitude. That high-level executive communication that you were talking about in the 5th level of that style of communication, that's a very high-altitude look. And the challenge for any leader as they grow and transition through those levels of leadership is to learn to, A, let go of some of the minutia that they used to be a part of and trust their leaders with it, and then learn also not to get sucked back down into the microscopic details that aren't part of their purview anymore. That's very difficult to do.
It's very difficult to do because we oftentimes default to the style that got us here.
Yes. Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And you have to intentionally figure out how not to. I've struggled with this personally.
As have I.
And I've learned over the last several years specifically, I spend more time at the executive table. And I get excited. And I oftentimes, because I'm working with project teams, I know a lot of the details. And I'll get excited to want to share those details. And I have to stop and realize
Yes.
this executive is not going to care about the details.
Right.
They're going to want the 30,000 foot view.
Right.
And they're going to want the ROI.
Yes.
Right. And I have to learn how to deliver that.
How to deliver it concisely and but clearly, but without including too much information, but not excluding anything that's important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's very difficult.
And Nate, I want to add. I want to move forward here into this second segment because where you're headed is where I want to go as well.
Okay.
But I think there's one. You mentioned the altitude piece,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's one example that I can bring forth from my own personal life that I think really demonstrates this well.
Okay.
An email from a peer, right? So if you were to shoot me an email and say, Mike, I need you to call me tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? I lose zero sleep over that. I just put it on the to-do list, call Nate in the morning.
Right. Right.
I get that exact same email from an executive 2 levels up,
I know where you're going.
and I can't sleep.
You're right.
Am I getting fired? Has something happened?
Right.
Or has there been some major event that has occurred?
Downsizing is coming up. Yeah.
Who knows?
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
And that's the difference because that altitude piece that you described changes the way we perceive the exact same 3 words.
Exactly.
Call me tomorrow. Very different. And the altitude makes a difference. And that's why you as a leader have to be able to know that because there's an intimacy at those lower levels, those lower altitudes, that does not exist at the top level.
Yes.
And we talked about this. I can give you feedback because of our intimacy and our relationship.
Yes.
And Nate, that's the number one thing I hear from people, my friends out there that listen to our podcast. I'm going to call someone by name, Mike and Val and Sandra and others. They all say, gosh, you and Nate really have a great rapport. And it comes
Very
because
kind. Very kind.
well, it's very true, right?
Yes, it is.
But we have that because of our friendship. So we can say
Right.
things to each other. So I can get hard-edged.
Yes.
And but you know me well enough to know
I do.
I get where he's coming from.
Yeah.
And vice versa. You can give me feedback and I know where you're coming from.
Right.
That exists at different altitudes. When you start moving up the ladders, if you don't recognize that that's not going to work anymore, you can cause some real damage.
Exactly.
With your organization, your reputation, and you mentioned it, the trust.
Yes, because any leader who's communicating on any level from any altitude must remember that every listener hears one question. What does this mean for me? How is this going to impact my day today? So the email, call me tomorrow. Well, what does this mean for me?
Mm-hmm.
That's what your question is. Or when someone says, hey, we have this new project, this new initiative that we're rolling out. Everybody starts thinking, what does this mean for me? How is this going to change? How am I going to communicate this to my team? How am I going to, if there's a, hey, everybody, we're taking on this new strategic initiative. What does this mean for me? Or someone, hey, I'm retiring, I'm moving, I'm changing companies. Well, what does this mean for me? That's the first question that any human is going to ask themselves.
We're living it.
Yeah.
We're rolling out AI.
Yeah.
Is it going to take my job?
What does this mean for me?
I don't, wherever it came from. Around my shop, what we constantly hear,
Yeah.
AI will not take your job. The person that learns how to use AI will take your job.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's coming from some senior leaders that are helping people to understand and work through some of that clarity and go, AI is not something that's going to take your job.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you don't learn how to adapt to it, no different than people who may not have adapted to computers
Right.
in the
Yeah.
90s.
Exactly.
And,
yeah.
and that same type of thing that, hey, like filling everything out on an old paper ledger that you've been doing for 30 years. Great that you understand that.
Right.
That's not going to serve you 30 years from now.
Right.
So if your goal is to work here another 20 years, you got to adapt to some of the new technology. And so to your point, it's where leaders can help to reduce that distortion in messaging.
Yeah.
Get rid of what does this mean to me? It answers that question. It means, hey, if you learn this, you're probably on a path to a better job. And we're living that every day.
Yeah. Think about it. Communications to board members or investors. What does this mean for me? They're thinking, well, What is the risk that's involved? What are the financial impacts? You have middle management. They're thinking, okay, what does this mean for our objectives or our metrics? How is this going to be measured? Or for the staff, or on an all-hands call, what does this mean to the purpose of my job or the culture of our organization? So that's where context switching and understanding your audience is so important as your executive voice evolves.
So let's take that in two parts, because you're already in segment 2, which is perfect, right?
Yeah.
It's where we need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Context switching, right? So
Okay.
when we say context switching,
Yes.
I think that's applying to what you just mentioned, because you kind of put them together. So let's just pull them apart
Sure.
for the group here. It's the context of what is the context that you're trying to deliver? Because what you deliver for a board member
Yes.
is
Mm-hmm.
contextually different than what you're going to deliver to a project manager.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And your ability to switch between those different pieces.
Right.
Nate, there's a great book out there called Brevity. Have you seen
No,
it?
I haven't heard about it.
Okay. Joseph McCormick is the author of this book.
Okay.
Great book.
A member of the Spice family? The
Spice family.
The McCormick Spices that you see in the grocery store.
You know, they're in Maryland. Did you know that their headquarters in Maryland?
Are they really?
They are, up towards Hunt Valley.
I did not know that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's even named like McCormick Drive or something or another. So, yeah.
Anyway, bad joke.
No, it took me a second to catch on where you're going. I thought you were first thought was Spice Girls, and I'm like, Spice Girls. There was a Spice Girl named McCormick. That's how little I know about music.
That's our title. It's a Spice Girl named McCormick. Okay, keep going.
Okay, Nate loves the fun titles. By the way, did you sell any ketchup to Eskimos this week?
I did not, but
How about ketchup to white ladies in white gloves?
I played that clip for my my girlfriend, who she also will conflate old sayings and such, and we were dying. We were laughing.
You know,
She's like, "What does it
couples
even
turn
mean?"
into each other. They really do. So just so you know, if you didn't used to conflate those things, it's her fault.
No, it's not.
You have to say that. Can't wait to see you guys married 10 years from now. and we'll see if you still say it's not.
That's right.
So the book Brevity, there's this one portion in there, and I think it talks about some of the context pieces. And it talks about your communications as being level 1, level 2, level 3. Mm-hmm. Have you heard this concept?
High level. Take me through it.
So I'm going to give you an example, which I think demonstrates it better. Level 1 communication. Nate, the house is on fire. Get out.
Okay. Yes.
Right. I gave you only what you really needed to know.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The very substantial key point that you needed. Right.
Yes.
Just that.
Mm-hmm.
And then level 2, Nate. Something in the kitchen caught on fire. It's spreading throughout the house. You should get out of the house. Right?
Yeah.
I gave you more details.
Mm-hmm.
Did they help? Maybe. Right?
Right. They provided some additional context. Okay, so I need to leave not through the kitchen, but through the front room so that,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So a little bit more of what you needed. Didn't have to have it to get to the same point, but it gave you a little bit more. Hey, Nate, I was cooking, and I walked away from the stove, and I didn't notice that it had boiled over. And when it boiled over, it went onto a dish rag that I had laying too close to the countertop, and it caught on fire. And then it started to spread. And I didn't realize you couldn't throw water on grease, so I threw water on the grease, and then it spread everywhere. So now the whole kitchen's on fire. I've called 911, but we should probably get out of the house.
I know some people that speak in that level 3 all too often.
We all do.
Yes.
Right? Truthfully, we all do.
Mm-hmm,
Right?
mm-hmm.
We all sometimes offer a little bit more context.
Yes.
But the difference in this is you need to know who you're in front of and who needs 1, 2s, and
Yes,
3s.
yes.
Your project manager needs that level 3.
Yeah.
Your executive needs that level 1.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes what happens as you're moving up the ranks,
Mm-hmm.
you start to recognize I do too much 3. So you start doing more 1 and you skip over 2s. There is a necessary place for that level 2 when I need to be able to give you and the phrase used in the book is BLUF, B-L-U-F, bottom line up front, right?
Okay, yeah.
I've even put that in emails to executives and just said, here's the BLUF, and I give them the one line. And then underneath of it, provide some of the additional context
In case
that
they need it, yeah.
they might need
Yeah.
or might want. Or provide an attachment that gets into more of it to try to draw that out.
Yeah, and I think a challenge that I fall into and I see others fall into is especially if the details are part of your purview and part of what you're doing, you're passionate about it, it's hard to leave them out of the bluff and out of the piece that you communicate. And I think that's one of the key components of evolving your communication over time and understanding the context in which you're delivering, because while you may be passionate about it, not everybody is, and that's okay.
Right, and even if they wanted to be passionate about it, sometimes they just have too broad of a preview to be passionate about the one or two things that you work on.
Right, yeah.
Right? I mean, if you're working in a large organization, there might be 50 different initiatives or you're going to hate this word, priorities, right, that are going on. And I need to know just enough about all of them to see how they connect and how they drive our business forward. But I can't get into the weeds, right?
Yeah.
Which is why we have department heads and different leadership groups.
Sure.
So it's understanding that. And so where I would leave people with is, when you think about context switching, you think about, well, specifically on context switching, think about your level 1, level 2, and level 3 communication.
Excellent.
And try to catch yourself. Fun exercise. Send an email and try to make it less than 26 words.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. It is damn near impossible.
I bet.
It's hard.
The required signature on my email is twice that.
You can leave the signature
okay,
out.
okay.
You can leave the signature out. The actual words.
Compliance would have a field day.
Yeah, but you can have some fun with that.
That's true. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I was once listening to a podcast, and they were an hour-long show. That was what they had committed to the listeners. It was a subscription podcast, so people were paying for it. So they had an agreement. It was an hour-long show, and they always went long. And one of the hosts of the show was really angry with his producer because he was like, "You never give me time checks. You never tell me where we are in the episode. How am I supposed to know how long we are?" He's like, "I want you to end the episode at 60 minutes, no matter what." And so the next episode, mid-sentence, just ended the episode at 60 minutes on the dot. And it made for great fodder on the next episode because they were,
fighting.
They were arguing about it. He's like, "Why would you do that?" He's like, "You told me to end it at 60 minutes on the dot." And he goes, "Well, you didn't give me any warning." He said, "You told me not to give you a warning." So anyway.
Bad communication.
Bad communication. Where was I? I started that going from somewhere.
I don't know. It's just a fun story.
Okay. Well, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where you were.
I don't know. Where did that come from? Well, I'll have to go back and listen.
Yeah.
I might edit all this out because it makes no sense.
That might bring you down to a 7 next week, Nate.
That's right.
Yeah, that'll be my one. Remember the point of your stories.
That you told a story that had no point at all. And I'm sure that there are people yelling at their radios right now. You were talking about this.
Yes.
And yeah, we'll come back to it.
Yeah. Oh, my wife's one of them. Yeah, we listen to it together, but I am not allowed to talk while she listens.
Oh, really?
And we must listen from beginning to end.
Okay.
Like even the music. She needs to hear the music.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
I like that.
She may send you an email on the music.
Oh, I hope she does.
Oh, yeah. You say so. Ask her on a scale of 1 to 10, how was the music?
Well, I could do, I didn't play this one for you last week, Mike.
You did. This is how we ended.
It's how we ended, but I didn't play just this little clip.
No.
Yeah.
You had the long intro.
I did, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So, all right, if we can say that one of the things to help you with your context switching is the idea of think about who am I talking to, what level of detail do they need? Do they need a 1, a 2, or a 3? Mm-hmm. The next piece of that is that audience segmentation.
Yes.
And here's, Nate, I brought something that I think you're going to love.
Take me through that.
This is so you.
Mm-hmm.
Nate, how many generations are working today?
I actually just read a very interesting article. Is it 5? Are we saying that there are 5 generations together in the workforce for the first time ever, potentially?
Yes, 5 in the workforce. And I went back and said, okay, well, how many were there like in the 60s or 70s? And they said pretty much 3, but you really kind of had one that was coming in as one was going out.
Right. And nowadays, because of the rapid changes in culture, the generation divides are getting smaller and smaller. So like the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas and the whatever the next one is, they're smaller groups. Whereas the Boomers, that encompasses 20 years, 2 decades, and Gen Z is like 8 years or something like that. It's very fascinating.
I guess it depends on where you go. So this is always one of the fun things on the generations. I can go and I can find, so like what I'm looking at, it's pretty much 20 years.
Okay.
So boomers are 46 to 64, Gen X 65 to 80, millennial 81 to 96. So little smaller.
Right.
Gen Z 97 to 2012. So about the same, that 15-year mark.
Well,
so
still
kind of went from
shorter.
20 to 15. So it did get a little bit shorter.
Yep.
But you're right. It's 5 generations to get to the point that
Okay.
are working today, and at larger amounts. So you've got boomers, right? So the people born after World War II. You got the Gen X, that's me and you, the cynical, self-sufficient latchkey kids that drank out of garden hoses and probably have more lead in our body than gas tanks do.
But that also have a unique upbringing in that we have grown along with technology and computers. So the boomers that kind of entered into the workforce as they were working, and for our kids, all they know is technology.
You know what I heard a boomer tell a millennial?
Oh, tell me.
You keep talking about all your technology. My generation's the one that made it.
Oh, okay.
And they have a point.
They do have a
Right?
point.
So you got your Gen X, you got your millennials, you got your Gen Zs, and very soon you'll have that next generation that's coming in as well.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Part of it's life expectancy, too. People are living much longer.
Yes.
And so
And
that
people are
adds to
working
it.
longer, for some because they have to, some because they want to.
Correct. My father works because he enjoys it.
Yeah.
And he's got some good friends, and he does what he wants to do when he wants to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But he's still working and he's a boomer. And his grandkids are now working as well, right?
Yeah.
They're all gainfully employed. So, you've got, him and me and them. I mean, that's 3 generations, right there.
Yep.
That you've got in the workforce, and it won't be long after that my grandkids
Yeah.
are going to be working 15 years from now. So that fits into that piece of the audience segmentation, because these folks want to hear things differently.
Yeah.
The boomers, the way that they want to hear things is uniquely different than how a Gen Z will hear it. So
Absolutely.
a boomer wants very structured things. They want voice. They don't want the email side of it. Whereas a Gen X wants direct and efficient. They want pragmatic.
Yes.
You've got millennials that want frequent, instant messaging, right? I see this all the time. The younger the generation, the more likely I'm getting pinged versus getting emailed.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Gen Z wants things that are instant, visual, bite-sized, right?
Yeah.
Which makes sense. You think about, your YouTube,
TikTok,
Instagrams,
Instagram Reels, yeah.
all of that, right?
It's
quick, bite-sized
Yep.
things. And it's funny how many conversations I'll have at work where we'll fight about communications, and I'll try to push people to be like, look, it's great that you're writing the policy. How about we do a video as well?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they fight, oh, no one watches the videos. And I'm like, look, videos are a lot like a spare tire. You use it when you need it.
Yeah.
And you're glad it's there when you need it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
nobody's using their spare tire every day. No one's watching the same video every day. I go and I grab it, I get the instruction I need, and I move on from it.
Yeah.
Right? I
Yeah.
make the food, the rest, whatever, right? And I think it's very much that way too. But it's interesting to see. And most of the folks I work with are probably in the Gen X, maybe young boomer
Yeah.
segment. And we're the ones designing a lot of resource and communication for folks.
Yeah.
And trying to get folks to recognize that difference.
Exactly. And I think that as we go through the generations from boomer to Gen X to millennial and so on, that I'll just call it the bullshit detector gets more and more sensitive to overproduced corporate language, to evasive jargon, to people first messaging, but not people first actions. I think that there's less and less tolerance of that as the generations whittle down. No one likes evasive corporate jargon. However, as the generations get younger, we're quicker to call it out or just walk away from it and go do something else.
Yeah, millennial and Gen X specifically hate the jargon.
Yeah.
They want the very clear-cut, pragmatic answer to things. And so, but there are folks that's going to be a little bit different from, right?
Yeah.
As we mentioned. So you have to know your audience. So Nate, I think a lot of people, I don't think that gets looked at very often. And it's a hard thing to look at. You may not always know the age of the audience that's in front of you or that you're going to be in front of. So I think sometimes you almost have to craft a message going, all right, how do I have elements to make sure that this is going to hit? And I think that's really true when you're at the top of an organization.
Yes.
Knowing I've got a broad audience here.
Right.
And I don't know how many are in what group, but I know there's someone.
There are people in that group somewhere in this audience. Yeah.
And I need to think through, how do I make something bite-sized? So it's kind of like the feedback I gave you. You had this bite-sized thing that was brilliant, right? That a company doesn't fall due to one misstep. It's a slow bleed.
Yeah.
Right? Bite-sized, beautiful, a Gen Z would have loved it, right? And, but you probably, if And a boomer would have liked it because they heard from you verbally. But you would have gotten like a millennial or maybe a Gen Xer that was looking for something that maybe was a little bit more direct.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, all right, so how do I add something else? Or how do I put visual into my presentation to go with it, right? So you've got the bite size, but how do I add the visual? Or how do I add this piece? That's a hard thing to think through. And we mentioned at the end of last week, there is a cost to doing good communication. And oftentimes that is an upfront process of thinking and refining your communication.
Yes.
And if I'm hearing you right, that what you meant when you mentioned that you worked with some people who were great communicators and they taught you and they took your edges off, that's what they did for you, right?
Yeah.
They sat there and they refined you and refined you and refined you. Yeah. And that took a lot of time.
Yes.
I'm sure, I would bet in a lot of cases, probably several days of your week were spent refining communications for the presentations and deliveries that you were doing.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. You're spot on.
When I think about this, Nate, why I was like, gosh, are there examples of where people have gotten this right or wrong, right? So then you start thinking. And I start thinking about recent places where some of leadership has gotten it wrong. And a lot of them oftentimes kind of fall into the crisis areas. So you think we're okay moving into crisis?
I think we should. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So that was the third part of this, is like communicating through crisis.
Yes.
The last crisis that I can really think about was COVID.
Yeah.
Big crisis that kind of affected everyone evenly.
Yep.
Different companies, have had their moments, but that's one that kind of hit everybody at once.
Yes.
Are you familiar with Brian Chesky?
No.
He's with Airbnb.
Okay.
Obviously, Airbnb was hit pretty hard during
Yeah.
COVID. We all know that. I think they lost like 80% of their revenue.
They did, and they're coming and doing a big pivot now with their marketing and their Airbnb experiences now that they're adding to their offerings.
Yeah, they've really turned the ship around. Well, he wrote during that time a very transparent and empathetic letter dealing with the layoffs and explained why the cuts were made. Expanded severance where he could, launched an alumni talent directory so that people could try to help each other find jobs out there, and did these type of things. And it landed very well, right? It helped preserve the culture of the company. Employees still trusted the leadership. Even though they didn't like the messaging, they still had trust in it.
Yeah.
It helped. The opposite happened over at Better.com. And Better.com, it was led by Visual Garg. He pulled everyone up on a Zoom meeting for 3 minutes. Yeah. And he fired 900 people at one time.
Oh, my gosh.
And he spent most of that time talking about how hard it was for him.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
How many people did he fire?
900 in 3 minutes.
In the HBO show Succession, they had someone do that. And it was the show, Succession, is fantastic. Very dark, very funny, very dark humor. But he did that, and they just chose someone in the company to be the patsy to go on and fire everybody. And all the messages were coming in, and he hated himself and, for having to do it. But it was so. Yeah. I'm picturing that in my head right now. Yeah. Listening to you describe it.
They probably pulled it from real life.
I bet they did, actually.
Well, it created a backlash where people who weren't being laid off quit.
I bet. Well, that goes back to what I was saying, where when the people first messaging doesn't match with people first actions, a lot of people that have the option to do so are going to walk away and do something else.
Well, we talked about it last week. When your intentions don't match your actions.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
When you say this is why I'm doing this, people first, and then your actions don't scream people first.
Yes.
That leads to a lack of genuineness, which leads to a lack of trust.
Yes.
And we talked about this last week. Why don't people trust some of these feedback loops? Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Because they see a lack of genuineness because intentions and actions don't line up.
And I think leading through crisis, and you mentioned a big one that hit everybody, leading in crisis is so difficult because it happens relatively rarely. If you're in a healthy organization, in a reasonably healthy economy, you're not going to face crisis every month. You might face challenges regularly, but a major course-altering crisis, that does not happen as often. And so a lot of the people have to lead and manage and communicate through that for the first time. They don't have the practice of doing it in the past.
So I would challenge you. I think it happens a little bit more frequently than you realize.
Well, I think change happens more frequently.
I think those big events happen a little bit more frequently. I think that they tend to be and they ebb and flow, but about 10-year cycles. We had the bubble in 1999, the tech bubble.
Yep.
And then followed by the Great Recession of 2008.
Yeah.
And then we had COVID.
Started 2019, so again, like 11.
Into 2019,
yep.
into 2020,
Mm-hmm,
right?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's been a little bit stable since. We've had a little bit up and down. We had events with the war and some other things that have happened.
Sure.
Right. But if you go even further back than that, you had the Iraq War. You go back to the gasoline embargoes, which were like the early 80s.
Right.
And then at the end of the 80s, the Cold War ended, and
Right.
there was a recession from that.
Yeah.
So if you go and look, we do have these major events that seem to hit us about every decade.
Yes, I agree with you. But unless you're a leader for 2 decades, you're only communicating through that crisis once.
But I think most people are leaders for several decades at different levels.
At different levels,
Right.
perhaps. Yeah. So if you had a leader that led through a crisis really well, then you can follow that model when you go into the next crisis. And if you don't, then you're learning as you go.
But see, I think that's part of the problem.
Okay.
If during 9/11, there's another. So during 9/11, I was a leader, and maybe I was at one of those lower altitudes.
Yep.
And so I led in a particular way, very intimate, very casual, right? Because I had that smaller group.
Right.
Now, fast forward to 2019, COVID's hitting. I'm now leader of leaders or leading through leaders.
Right.
Right. If I'm thinking back to, hey, how did I handle this the last time we had this big event? Right. I'm probably missing the mark because I'm not adjusting for who I currently lead through that crisis. So I do think most people
That would be the context switching and the audience segmentation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I do think you said people may not always lead through multiple crises. I do think they lead through multiple crises, but they lead through
At
multiple
different
crises
levels.
at different levels.
Yeah.
And if they don't learn how to evolve, which is the whole point of what we're talking about today, how do you evolve your communication? If you don't learn how to do that, you're going to have a lot of problems because that different communication or what you did, how you communicated at your original level
Yes.
in that crisis, and now fast forward 10 years or 20 years at a
Right.
different level,
Right.
if your evolution of handling that crisis has not evolved, you're going to run into some problems.
Yes. I agree with you there.
And I think that's what you see in some of these. You probably have a leader who got it, who understood.
Yep.
And then you have leaders who don't, right? So you get the Brian Chesky who understood it and was in touch with people, and then you have Vishal Garg who really missed the mark on all of it.
Yeah.
All right, Nate. When it comes to this crisis piece,
Yes.
when people think about it, what are some of the things that you would tell them you need to be thinking when you're leading through crisis and change? Are there certain words that you would put in people's heads to think through?
Yes, there are. And I would incorporate, we talk about communicating through crisis and change. And crisis are those big events that happen, every so often. Whereas change and change management is something that happens much more frequently. It usually is not as big, not as impactful, but still very, very meaningful. And whether communicating through crisis or communicating through change, being a change manager or a change agent, one or the other or both, there are 3 keys that I would point to keep in mind. One is transparency. Communicate clearly and openly and honestly. Again, the lie detectors of the millennials and the Gen X's, but everybody really in that moment, just tell me what's actually happening and what's going on in the organization.
So, yeah, I agree with you, Nate. And where I would add to that transparency piece is don't sugarcoat it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? Define the reality as it is.
Yes.
C.S. Lewis was asked during the Second World War to go on the radio, at the time the most intimate form that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And what he did was he didn't sit there and try to tell folks that, hey, this is going to be done by next week or by summer or by Christmas or anything. He very clearly defined the reality of what was going on and helped then try to lead people through those moments.
Yes. And the other piece after transparency is frequency. Communicate often, because people will interpret silence, and then that interpretation is often incorrect, because the more frequently that you communicate with transparency, the more frequently the people hear the message that you're giving, instead of just trying to come up with whatever rumors are happening, or morale's going down, and so everyone's wondering what's happening, and people create narratives to fill the space if a leader is not communicating transparently and frequently.
Do you think most leaders believe that they communicate enough? What would the average leader, would they say, yes, I communicate enough?
I believe so, yeah.
The majority of employees say leaders don't communicate enough.
Yeah.
And the majority of leaders say they communicate too much.
Yeah.
And
that's a big gap.
And that's an interesting piece for that feedback loop.
Yep.
Right? Most people want more communication than you're giving, and I think you're hitting on something that people need to hear. That frequency piece, super important.
Yes.
I had someone tell me once, Mike, when you are tired of hearing yourself, people are probably starting to hear you.
Right. It takes 17 repetitions for people to understand and to hear. Yeah, actually hear.
That frequency piece is really important.
Yeah.
And what's the last one?
Last piece, calm authority. Communicating calmly through crisis and through change is, I've heard it said, the speed of the leader is the speed of the team. If the leader is panicking and laying off 900 people, well, then you have the rest of the people that are still there jumping ship as well. Whereas if you have a leader that says, hey, this is hard, it is problematic, it's not pretty, but we're going to figure it out, and we're going to figure it out together as best we can, that sends a very different message to the team. So communicate transparently, communicate frequently, and communicate calmly.
When you mention that calm authority, I think about FDR and his fireside chats.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you want to talk about a scary moment. The country's in recession, 20+% unemployment rates. We get bombed. We're not ready for it in any way, shape, or form. The Americans don't support it. And he has to go in front of people and calmly talk through what's happening and what we're doing. And he did it exactly as you just described, with that calm authority that created a horizon for people and told them, this is our path forward. It's an actionable path. Here's what you need to do. Here's your part in this. But he gave them a path forward. So, Nate, I couldn't agree with you. I wrote those down as you mentioned them because I think you're leaving us with something really positive here as we think through the crisis. And I don't think it's only in the crisis that they matter.
No, not at all.
I do think that they're really good. So, folks, I'm gonna read you what I wrote down that Nate said: transparency, frequency, and calm authority. Nate, any final thoughts on this topic of evolving your communication as a leader?
I have one final takeaway.
Please tell us.
And I'm going to do it very concisely as per your notes.
Drop the mic.
Thank you. The higher you climb, the simpler your language must become.
Perfect. I got nothing else to add. This was a fantastic use of time. It was a great conversation. A little longer than our normal conversations, but I believe it deserved it.
I couldn't agree more, Mike. We invite you, dear listeners, to be part of the conversation. You can email us at takeitofflinepodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn. We're going to get back to promoting that. We've had a busy couple of weeks here, but we're back into the swing of things, and we're glad to have you along with us.
And don't forget to subscribe. This way you'll know when a new episode has come out, and you can listen to it during your morning or afternoon commute and share it with your friends, your family, and maybe some of those that you are in charge of leading.
And if and when you do subscribe, leave us a review, because that helps this podcast to get in front of more people as they're perusing wherever they listen to podcasts. Reviews, 5-star reviews, helps to put us at the top of people's search lists.
Yeah, and when we know what you're talking about, what you're taking offline, we'll be sure to bring it here and take it offline with you.
Yes, we will. So until next time, everybody, be sure to take care of each other.
And take care of yourself.
I said that backwards, but I think it works.
It still works.
All right. The Take It Offline podcast is a production of Take It Offline Media. All views and opinions are ours alone, reasonably informed, and meant for personal enrichment and entertainment.
Are you not entertained?
Views expressed do not represent any particular organization or employer. Copyright 2026 by Take It Offline Media.